Hello everyone, and welcome to a Wizard101 video. So today I'm going to be going over the best gear from level 125 to 130, just as an update to my last previously video on from level 1 to 120. This is a video on the new update in the game from level 1, not from level 1, but from level 125 to level 130. So I'm going to be going through the locations where you can get the gear and what the bosses drop and whatnot. And yeah, so first things first, we're going to start here in Aerial Jungle, in the Aerial Shore area. So the first guy we want to look at is this guy right here, Liligo. This is for crafting. So if you don't want to farm the level 125 Kabbalist boots, which I would rather farm those than craft these guys, but if you do want to craft these are pretty decent stats for the boots here. So you got all the schools here. There's a storm version. So if you want to craft them, you can come to this guy, craft the level 125 boots. He's right here. You can also craft some other gear as well here, if you want to. But that's where to find the level 125 guy who makes the gear sets for level 125. So I'm going to go over here to the Aerial Jungle area and show the location of where to get the level 125 hats and also the level 125 boots. Now for these two, there are other dungeons as well that you can farm these, but for the most part, I like farming this one dungeon over here, which is in the corner tucked away. But yeah, you can still farm other bosses. I just prefer farming this guy and these bosses in this dungeon here, which is the Calaman Raiders hideout. So you want to go through the secret tunnel here. There's 3 bosses. There's one boss. The 2 minions are kind of like a boss, but their health is terrible. They kind of are like minions themselves. But I consider them bosses because they drop good gear. For minions, drop these amazing level 125 gears that are literally just a downgrade from these storm boots I have on. I mean, if you want to go for the level 125 boots, you don't have to, but they're just a little bit less stats wise compared to the boots I have on now as a level 130. Same thing, it goes for all the schools here. So if you want to farm nearly all the boots for all the schools, go to this dungeon here. This dungeon drops all the boots and all the hats. So if you want the boots and the hats, just farm this dungeon. So the first guy you face, Ganon, he drops the balance, storm, fire, death, life, ice, and myth boots. The next guy, Madden, he drops the balance, storm, fire, death, life, ice, and myth. So he drops all of those boots for all the schools. The second guy does. And then the last guy, the final boss, he will drop the storm, fire, death, life, ice, and myth. Unfortunately, the last boss does not drop the balance boots. So if you're a balance wizard, you don't need to fight the boss because the boss does not drop the balance boots. That saves you a lot of time, so that way you only can just farm the first 2 bosses if you want the balance boots. So that's for your level 125 boots and hat. For level 125 robe, there is a boss that has a pretty good robe. His robe is nearly as good as the level 100 robes. Maybe slightly better for some schools than other schools. For Storm, though, I would prefer the level 100 Malistaire Cloak of Flux still for a Storm. His brigade armor is, you get more health, but your accuracy goes down a lot. Your damage is, I believe, not as great as the Malistaire's robe. The crit is probably a little more. I haven't looked at it in a while, but his crit on the gear set's a little more than Storm. But for the other schools, though, you might consider doing this skeleton key boss. So the boss I'm talking about, let me just go back to Aerial Shore here. Now this boss I'm talking about is located in Xanadu. So let me quickly go to the stream porter here. Go to Xanadu. So you want to go into the sewer system to find this gold skeleton key boss if you're interested in the level 125 robe. If not, you can go ahead and skip the video up further. If you want to look at like the level 130 stuff, go ahead and do that. So if you're staying here, so you go down here, you have to be a certain level and a certain length into the main quest line to open this door here. So you go in here, and as you can see, there's an area down here that has an area where you can go in. So it's right next to Bat's cave here. So you just go in here. His name is, if you want to find him, it's Corporal Tennyson. He has 80,000 health. And his cheats are pretty nasty. I read the cheats. You know, I will post a link of all these bosses and minions I have told you guys about in this video down below in my channel description. So you can take a look at the cheats. Take a look at all the drops that they drop. So, yeah, you're going to want to go through here and farm this guy. He drops a robe that you might want to consider, level 125 robe, that is better for some schools. For other schools, it's not really worth it. So if you don't really want to deal with this guy, you know, your level 100 robes will still be one of the best robes in the game. So you can either stick with this robe or go for this robe, depending on depending on what you like, you know. Go for this robe. It's definitely something to consider. Gold skeleton key boss, level 125. So that's pretty much covers all the level 125 gear sets. So if you don't want to do 125, so you want to skip to 130, all the gear sets for level 130 is at the final area of Imperia. And also, there is a level 130 crafting guy who I will show and mention in this video. So where we want to go is to the Nimbus Temple. This is for level 130 crafting. So you want to go in Nimbus. This guy is in one of the rooms off to the side. He has the level 130 craftable boots and also other gear as well. But we mainly want to focus on the boots here because the boots in the game right now are the main focus and the main piece of gear you guys will want. So he's off to the right here. So we got 3 vendors here. You got Varen, who you just go to an equipment shop. He just does really just a robe. It's not really worth looking at him. But if you go over here to these guys, so you can also get like perfect jewels from that guy. So Romar here. This is the guy who does the boots and the wands. So maybe some of these wands will be worth getting. I mean, it looks like a good Stitch wand. So if you want like a good Stitch wand, you know, it has decent stats, decent damage, you can come here and look at them. If you also want some good Athems, he also drops. Well, he doesn't drop, but you can craft some good Athems in here. Rings, I mean, decent crit rings. As you can see, they're just pretty much a downgrade from the Paradox rings and blades. I mean, just different stats for each one. But if you don't want to farm them, you can definitely craft them here. They're pretty much the same. Same thing with the Paradox amulets. I mean, they're just downgrades of the originals, but they're pretty much mastery amulets with resist and health. Same thing with these. But mainly the boots, as compared to the level 130 Paradox boots, as you can tell, the stats are identical. If you compare the boots to the level 130 farming boots to the level 130 crafting boots, they're exactly identical. So if you don't want to farm the level 130 gear, this is your best place to go if you don't want to do it. So you will need some crackling Xanadu boots though, so you might have to do some farming to get some of the boots to craft this gear, and you'll also have to get some shock gear, pure ether dust and stuff, and all kinds of this other junk. So you will still have to do a lot of farming either way for these boots. It's just worth mentioning. You can also get some other gear sets here. Same thing with the helmets. Again, here's my level 130 farmable boss from the bosses and stuff hat compared to theirs. Exactly identical. So if you don't want to farm the Storm Titan, don't want to farm the other 2 dungeons as well, this guy's your homie. He will be your homie. So if you don't want to do that, you got Romar there. So let's go back to Aerial Shore. Now to the fun part. The 3 final dungeons. These 3 final dungeons, you can farm each one of them for the gear. I'll mention which gear they have by, let me just go all the way. So you want to go to the Husk. Once you get to the area in Husk, just go up here. I'm sure you guys know your way. I'm sure you guys been here for those who are level 130. So for the first dungeon here, I'm going to mention. So the first dungeon, you face Vigilant Sargon. So with this first boss, what items you get in this first dungeon here. So you can get that level 130 hat. So you can get the Paradox hats. Every single one of them from every single school in this dungeon. So if you want the 130 hats, you can farm Vigilant Sargon, who's the final boss in this first dungeon. You can get the Balance, Death, Fire, Ice, Life, Storm, Myth. So every single school you can get from this guy. You can also get the level 130 boots from this guy. If you don't want to farm the Story Titan, this boss is going to be the best to farm the level 130 hat and boots. So you can get the Balance, Death, Fire, Ice, Life, Myth, and Storm boots from this guy. So you can get this hat and these boots from this guy. If you don't want to farm the Storm Titan, which will take so long unless you have someone with a dot, this guy is the best to farm for the hat. So if you want the hat, farm this guy. If you have a good team for the Storm Titan, the Storm Titan does not drop all the hats. Just to mention that. He does not drop all the hats. The Storm Titan only drops a Fire, Ice, Myth, and Storm hat. That's only 4 schools out of the 7. So he only drops 4 hats out of the 7 for the Storm Titan. But the Storm Titan does drop all the boots. He drops all the school boots. Same thing with this guy. So if you don't want to deal with his cheats, Vigilant Sargon here in this very first dungeon here for those hats and the boots will be your best homie, your best guy to farm for these boots. I mean, you will save a lot of time by farming this guy from getting those 2 items. So just farm him for that. Now going up to the second dungeon. So we're done with the boots now. So you can't get the boots from the second or third dungeon. You can't get them there. So if you want the boots and the hat, just farm the first dungeon. And also if you want the boots, I mean, you could farm the Storm Titan too, but it's not really worth it because his cheats are insane. So the second dungeon here, I'm going to mention this dungeon. Some people might not know, but this dungeon for the second dungeon is actually where you can get the best deck in the game, the best Paradox level 130 decks, like I have here, Storm and Paradox deck. So If you don't want to farm the Storm Titan for the decks, the Storm Titan only drops the Balance, Death, Life, and Storm deck. He does not drop the other decks. So if you want to farm for your Fire, Ice, and Myth, you're going to have to farm this dungeon right here. This second dungeon right here. So, the guy we are looking at for the boss in this dungeon, the second dungeon, is Arachna Magna Magnus. Magna Magnus, yeah. So, he drops every single school, all their decks, and it's also worth mentioning, he also drops all the level 130 Aethams as well. So if you want to farm the Aetham and the deck, just farm this dungeon right here, the second dungeon. You can get both of those here. So he does not drop the hat or the boots. So if you want those, again, first dungeon. But if you want the deck, the Paradox decks, go ahead and farm this guy. The Aetham, not really worth it, honestly. I would just stick with the level 100 Aethams, but if you want, maybe, I don't really think the damage is really that great on the new level 130 Aethams, but it's worth looking at if you want to, but it's not really better than the level 100 Aetham from Darkmoor. So I would just recommend just keeping your level 100 Aetham. Now moving on to the third dungeon, since that's pretty much it for that dungeon. So moving on to the third dungeon. So third dungeon is where you fight not Spider, but his children. You fight Rat and Scorpion again. In this dungeon, you got to go through some minions at first, I believe, and then you fight them. So you fight the two of them together. So this is where, in this dungeon, you can't really get the hat, you can't get the boots either, but you can get the Mastery level 130 Paradox amulets, all of them from this dungeon. So if you want to go for the Mastery level 130 amulets, just farm this dungeon right here. So if you're looking for that, this is going to be your best dungeon here. Your favorite dungeon for those amulets. So now we go to the final dungeon. The most hated dungeon in the game. The most hated boss in the game. And the most cheated boss in the game. I really hate this boss. I think his shadow abilities, especially when he goes away, is insane. He can hit 8k plus when he comes back. This boss is insane unless you have a Death Wizard and you have a good strategy against him. So it will literally take you about an hour and a half to 2 hours to beat this guy. But with the right team, you could do it less than that if you have the right people, the right members on your team to take care of him. But yeah, like I mentioned before, he drops 4 of the hats: Fire, Ice, Myth, and Storm. He also drops the Balance, Death, Fire, Ice, Life, Myth, and Storm boots. And he also drops the Balance, Death, Life, and Storm deck for level 130. So that's what the Storm Titan drops. He doesn't really drop hardly anything else, really. I mean, I think he drops the rings, and I think some of the other guys back there also drop the rings. So the rings, they're not really worth mentioning that much. I mean, they're kind of upgraded, if you want more damage, you should stick with the 120 Mimic ring. But if you want like more crit and stuff, then you can go ahead and farm the Paradox rings. They're just similar to this ring here I have on. Just a little bit different stats. Not too big of a difference to really look at on this guy right now in this video. But I will post each one of the bosses down below. You can kind of go through them and see. If you do want the rings, those bosses will be down there. One of the bosses will drop the rings for you. You just gotta scroll down and there will be a ring section. Just look at the rings. There will be paradox rings, and you can kind of go through each one and see who drops what. So I use this website. I usually use the Wizard101 wiki to look through all the gears and which bosses and what their cheats are. It's a very helpful website. I'll post a link to each one of these guys down below, each one of the dungeon bosses, so you can go through and look through each one and see which gear and compare it to your gear which you currently have on your wizards. So again, that's the best gear from level 130, 125 to 130. If you guys want some crafting videos of the best crafting gear, if you guys want some from like level 1 through 120 best crafting gear, or if you want a video on some more of the other dungeons other than Waterworks, like Upper Zigzag, which does have some better crit and damage gear overall than the Waterworks, like I mentioned previously. So that'll be the end of the video, guys. Thanks for watching. If you want more of these, like the video. If you have suggestions for different tutorials, if you guys need help for different tutorials, check out my other tutorial videos. Those might help you. And also, subscribe if you want to stick around and see which other tutorials come out on my channel, and also some of my other walkthroughs, as well as other games on my channel. So thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you guys next time. Nature out.